impressed. I really didn't know what I was going to do for a propeller. So in the year 2007, I went to Oshkosh and I attended a forum entitled Carve Propeller. And I was really excited about it because at the time I knew virtually nothing about it. I knew absolutely nothing about it. It was a complete mystery to me. And so for the next 3 days, I hung out in that forum watching an old timer. His name was Jerry Thornhill. He's from Helsper, Illinois. And he explained, he methodically carved his propeller over that 3-day period. And of course I just stayed there and took many photographs and asked him a bunch of questions as he went along and listened to everyone else's questions also. I came back from that experience with that information, all of my notes and my photographs, and I thought to myself, I really want to try this. I mean, what do I have to lose? A little bit of money. I can glue a block up, and if I make a mistake, what's the difference? What do I have to lose? So what I did was I came back and I had the time to do it. Jerry explained that how do you determine the type of wood to use? Well, he said that there were many different species possible to use on a propeller. A lot of it's just personal preference, but for a low-powered propeller for a Pietenpol type airplane, you can use maple, walnut, ash. I used ash for my first one. This was the first propeller that actually, this is the second propeller. The first one was a the first attempt was a failure. I glued up a block of 5 laminations of ash, and when I was at Brodhead one year, I was taking pictures of all the propellers that were on the field about the same horsepower range that I was looking for. And I really concentrated on just gathering all the information that I could, just visually and measuring things to see, what the thickness of the hubs were and things like that. So when I was here, I determined that the average thickness of the hub on the horsepower propeller that I was looking for, under 100 horsepower, was about 3.75 inches thick. So that's the thickness that I made my glued up block to start with. But when I was here, I saw a really beautiful shaped propeller that I really wanted to emulate. So I just stood in front of it with my camera, took a picture, went home, printed out an 8x10 photograph, and then just took my ruler and I scaled it up until I was able to make this paper pattern. Now, how did I know what length to make the propeller and what pitch to make the propeller? Well, that was just kind of anecdotal information that I gained from coming up here to Brodhead and asking people that had the same type of airplane that I did, the same power plant, same airplane, same configuration. And the consensus that I came up with at the time was that I was going to make a 76-inch diameter propeller, 46-inch pitch. I talked to Ken Perkins, and he was kind of the guru at the time for the Model 8 engines, and that's what he recommended. So that's what I was going to do. So that, when I scaled up that photograph, this is what I came up with. This is kind of a heavy cardboard. So I purchased 5 3/4 inch thick planks of ash from a hardwood dealer, and I glued all 5 pieces. The first thing I did was I cut all 5 pieces to the proper length, then I pre-balanced each one of those planks to see which end was heavier than the other one. So after I determined which end was heavier, I just marked it with an H. So when I did pile up the laminations, I just alternated the heavy ends. So I had more of a chance of ending up with a pre-balanced block than if I would have just done it randomly. So I had my five pieces pre-balanced. I alternated the heavy ends. I stacked them up evenly, and I anticipated that when I was going to smear the glue on there and clamp it down, I wouldn't have any control over the pieces moving out of place. So on a portion of the block where I knew I wasn't going to have the blade, I drilled some dowel holes on each end, so that when I did have it all glued up and started to clamp it, I could shove a wood dowel through there, and I would know that the laminations would not be shifting with the glue. So I had everything prepared. I used Wellwood plastic resin glue because I just copied everything that Jerry Thornhill had showed me. And he said that he had really good luck with that glue. He has carved over 30 propellers using that glue. He's never had any trouble with it. And the advantage of that type of glue is it's mixed with water. It's a brown powder, and you mix it with water. And as you go along the gluing process, you don't have to mix all the glue at the same time and worry about it setting up on you. What I did was I prepared like 5 or 6 different batches. I weighed out the water and the powder in 6 different batches, and I had them lined up on the table so that I only had to mix up one batch at a time. That way it wasn't going to set up on me before I was ready for it. You have to have quite a few C-clamps with a capacity of 3 3/4 inch thickness. And I put one about every 4 inches around the perimeter, I would say. So the day I was ready to glue it up, I mixed up the first batch of glue, smeared it on with a notch trowel, and laid it up, making sure that I alternated the heavy ends. I had 5 laminations 3/4 inch thick, and then when I had all the laminations glued together, smeared and laid up, then I drove the dowel rod through each end of that block so that it wouldn't move. And then I proceeded to clamp down with the C-clamp pressure all the way around. After that dried, you have to be careful when you're gluing up that block so that you try to alleviate any glue buildup on the 2 faces, the top face and the bottom face. It really helps out a lot. Here you're going to have a lot of dripping glue down the sides, but you don't have to worry too much about that. I let that dry for a few days, and then I took my paper pattern. Well, I determined where the center of that block was, probably at this point. And I took my paper pattern and I drew a longitudinal line all the way through the center of that block on the face, and lined that up with the same longitudinal line that I had on this pattern. Trace both blades out on there, and then you need a wood cutting bandsaw, and it's probably a good idea to either have some extended supports if you're going to try to do it yourself, or have another person, because you're starting out way out there, and it's kind of hard to see the pencil line too, so it helps to have another person guide it, and you have to proceed really slow through the bandsaw because you're cutting through this big block. And it wants to fall off the edge unless you have some extra support. But you do the best you can. You cut along the outside perimeter of that cut line. Prior to taking it over to the bandsaw, I tried to hack off big hunks of material that I knew were going to be in the way anyway. I think I used a chainsaw, just cut the corners off and remove as much material as I could before I even put it into the bandsaw. It just makes it that much lighter and easier to handle. Okay, so at that point I had the profile cut out. Now, question, how do you, I already knew that I wanted a 46-inch pitch. And what that means is, in simple terms, let's say you had a gigantic block of jello, and you took the propeller to the face of the jello, and you started to push and advance the propeller through the jello. If the propeller has a 46-inch pitch, you rotate this propeller through the block of jello one complete revolution, and theoretically you would be 46 inches from the front of the block of jello by the time it was one complete revolution. Now the way Jerry determined how do you find where to you need to draw some pitch guidelines on this block at this point to help tell you where your leading edge and your trailing edge is going to end up. So how do you do that?
Oh, excuse me.
Now, I'd like to say if there's any questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand and I can help you. So Jerry had a kind of a simple formula that he used to plot points on the block at this point. What he did is he established stations along the length of the blade. This would be station 0, then it would be 6 inches out, 12 inches, 18, etc. So every 6 inches he established a station. And what he would do is he took just a common string and he marked every 6 inches on this string, used it as kind of a compass to draw arched lines 6 inches away from the center, 12 inches, 18 inches, etc. And then he had his station lines drawn on the top of the block at that point. Then you take a square and you extend the lines down on each face at each station. Then he had a simple math formula that he used to plot the points on the line at each one of those stations. For example, on this particular pattern here, which is actually the propeller sitting over there that I carved for this Whitman tailwind project that I'm going to use. And that particular propeller has a 76-inch pitch. So let's say at station 18, so this is 6, 12, 18. At station 18 of the propeller, I take this dimension of the chord, which happens to be 7.43 inches. We take the chord divided by the circumference of this circle. In other words, if I were to draw at the 18-inch mark, if I were to draw a complete circle around here, the length of that, the circumference of that circle. So the chord length of the blade divided by the circumference of that circle times the pitch gave me 4.99 inches. I took the 4.99 inches divided by 2, which comes to basically 2.5 inches. So at the 18-inch station, I would be 2.5 inches up from the center line on the leading edge and 2.5 inches down from the center line on the trailing edge. And I plotted that point. I did the same procedure at each station. So at that point you have, well, I should back up. After you cut this block out, you need to draw a center line on your block all the way around, right directly in the center, so that you have somewhat of a measuring from. When you get your 2.5-inch dimension that I just calculated, you measure from the center line up on the leading edge and from the center line down on the trailing edge to plot that point. So I had a point at each station at that time, and I just connected the dots with a pencil line all the way around the propeller. And you can kind of see how that would work. So I would have a point here, a point there, a point there, a point there, and I just made a pencil line and connected those points on the leading edge and the trailing edge. So that's the most important information that you have to carve your propeller. And you can see here where, when I connected the dots, where those points, how that line played out when I connected the dots on there. So that's your information that you need that tells you where your leading edge and your trailing edge is on each blade. You never want to erase that line until the bitter end of your sanding process. Always leave those lines so you can always see them. So at that point, you have that information plotted on the block. Now, you want to get rid of everything that doesn't look like a propeller, right? Like a sculptor. So, the way Jerry did it was he took after the block with the chainsaw, as you can see here. And the first third of the blade from the center out is basically a fairing. In other words, you don't try to really make it into a blade per se. It's just kind of a fairing that goes from a blocky shape transitioning to a blade shape. So he took the chainsaw and he clamped it down really good to the corner of the table, and he would plunge the chainsaw in, making these series of wafer cuts like this, making absolutely sure that he kept his eye on that line at all times so that he never got close to it. And when you make your initial cuts, you need to stay about 1/4 of an inch away from that line on the leading edge and the trailing edge. So if you're, I usually try to cut the back of the blade first, which is the flatter side of the blade, like that. So you take your chainsaw and you just keep plunging it in, and on the back it's more or less flat, as I stated. So you make your series of wafer cuts, and then you can just knock them over with a hammer at that point, and remove the majority of the material with the chainsaw. On the first propeller that I carved, I did it the same way Jerry did it. And the second step, he used a 7 or 9 inch diameter disc sander with like an 80 grit paper. And that really takes a lot of material off on one stroke. And it works very well. It takes a lot of material off. It creates a tremendous amount of dust. It's one of the disadvantages of it. So at that point, he would remove all these cut marks on there and get this blade fairly close. And he actually completed the back of this first blade using an orbital sander for the last step. Once he got most of the material off with that 7-inch disc sander, he went after it with a sander like this, with like a 150 grit paper. Finish sanded it. Always keeping in mind, yes sir.
Dan, when you're making those curve cuts through there, are you trying to make it into an airfoil shape, or are you just kind of eyeballing it to an arc curve?
Well, it's mostly artwork. You know, you've been around airplanes long enough to know what an airfoil looks like. I didn't have a predetermined shape that I was going for at this point. I carved the first half of the blade the way I thought it should look. In other words, the back of the blade is more or less close to being flat. And then when I went around to the front of the blade, I would take the chainsaw like this to create a curved surface on the front of the blade. And I did, like I said, I didn't really have a predetermined exact pattern that I was trying to copy at that point. I would complete one side of the blade from start to finish, so I would have a completed blade to transfer this information over to the other side before I even started that one. And the way I did that was when I finished carving one side, at every station, I would go and make a cardboard pattern like, well, how do I do this? Okay, I had one of those large contour gauges with all the little pins, and you push it down into something, it'll set the shape or whatever you're pushing it down on. And so every 6 inches, I would plunge that contour blade so I have an impression of that particular station. And with that contour gauge, I would make a cardboard pattern like this. So that when I had cardboard patterns for the top and cardboard patterns for the bottom. At this point, at this pencil line here would correspond to my drawn pitch line. So I knew exactly where to hold this when I was transferring the information over to that side. So after I was able to complete a set of these paper patterns, then I could go after the other side and begin to remove material off of that second side. Proceeding a little bit more slowly because I didn't want to cut more material off the second side than I did the first side. So you have to proceed a little bit slower and keep checking it with your paper pattern as you remove more and more material. Everybody getting that?
What kind of failure did you have on the first one?
Failure I had on the first one was I wasn't prepared for my glue-up procedure. I didn't have all the proper notch trowels. I didn't have enough glue. I didn't have enough clamps. So I just kind of went into it blind, and I got about 4 or 5 laminations put together, knowing that it was starting to set up on me because I had mixed all the glue at the beginning, and it started to set up, so I just kind of gave up. But that was an advantage to me because I actually used that one to practice with the chainsaw to get the feel of it and see how it was going to go and whatnot. So it was actually an advantage for me.
Would it be a possibility to vacuum bag the laminations rather than use clamps on it?
I'm not familiar with that, but if you can get quite a bit of pressure on them, I guess you could do it that way. I don't see any reason why you couldn't. Can you get quite a bit of pressure on them that way?
Yeah. Like 13 psi, something like that.
Okay.
It would equate to probably...
You could try it. Okay.
Hey, I not exactly sure what I was at that presentation also for I spoke to you a couple of times also.
Oh.
Instead of using sequence, I made up a jig.
I was able to apply pressure. I had a bar that went across the way at each, let's say every 6 inches.
Sure.
With all threaded rod.
Right.
So I put the bar across the all threaded rod and applied pressure throughout. But I had to jig.
That's probably a better way to do it.
You know, I used to do a lot of machining, so I was familiar with that. So that way I was able to get equal pressure. I had a big workbench. So I was able to pull the all threaded rod down, then drain a bar across, and just crank that one.
Did everybody hear that?
No.
Okay. What this gentleman said to do was, instead of using individual C-clamps, he cut, a bar.
A bar across.
Cut.
You could use anything. You could use a block, 2x3. You could use angle iron, whatever you have in the shop.
He cut, let's just say, pieces of angle iron, maybe like 8 inches or 9 inches long, and used the angle iron with threaded rod to apply the pressure at each station. And that's probably a better way to do it, because then, you know, it's a more even pressure, and you're getting pressure all the way across the core of the blade to squeeze.
That's what I did when I did mine. It worked great. I had access to my tank.
Right.
And just use
And I actually did that on that propeller right there.
Yeah.
The only thing one additional thing I did, I put a piece of wax paper down, like that glue on that angle iron. I had to take that one, you know, so I
He said that he used wax paper to protect the angle irons, and was probably protect tabletops and whatever you didn't want to do on. Exactly.
So once you do the problem, then do I load again, or is there a problem?
The question was, once I established these templates, could I use them for another prop? It would be pretty difficult, I think. I mean, from the way I'm looking at it, because I'm getting this information from my finished first blade, and unless if I wanted to make the second color identical to the first one, it'd be pretty darn hard for me to, the way I carve it, it'd be pretty darn hard to get the second color to look exactly like this one. Oh, one thing I neglected to say was, when I'm making these paper patterns, these additional pencil lines here correspond to the glue lines. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but when you carve the prop, you get arched glue lines between the laminations. And that's real good information to use. So that I transfer the position of the glue line, I mark it with pencil here, so that when I go to compare it to the other side that I'm working on, the position of the glue line is going to tell you whether you have to take more material off at that point or not, so that you can move the glue line one way or the other.
Yeah, that glue line is your reference point. You can tell if you're on this side or the opposite side. That's what that line's going to be consistent. If you get one high or low, you know that you either have to take off or wait till you pull too much off.
Right. The gentleman says that the glue lines are really, really good information, because you can, the position of the glue line on one side has to exactly correspond to the position of the glue line on the other side. And just from that, you can pretty much surmise that you're exactly in the exact right spot. You've taken off the exact same amount of material on both sides if the position of that glue line is in the exact same spot on both sides.
Was there a minimum thickness that you were trying for at the center of the blade?
You mean at the hub here?
No, at say at the halfway out point.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't really have that information, before I started. I just kind of made it look the way I thought it should look. And as a matter of fact, this was the first airworthy propeller that I flew behind for 7 years. And if you compare this to the new one that I have on there now, They're the exact same shape, but I needed to achieve a higher RPM on takeoff. That's why I carved the new propeller. This one looks like a war club compared to that new one. The blades are really thick. And the other one I gained about at least 100 RPM over this one. I was really timid when I carved this because this was my first one, and I was always afraid I was going to remove too much material. And so when I stopped, it was actually really too thick. The blades are too thick.
This is what, a 42-inch?
This is a 46 and that's a 44.
For get more RPM.
Right.
I do have one question for you, and I'm curious about this, the hole, the center hole. Should we put that in first or afterwards?
I put it in afterward. The question is, when should you put the center hole in? Probably different ways to look at it. I put it in after I carved the blades.
And then you check it. I mean, for making sure that it's the center, from the center to the tip.
Well, I had the center of the block marked.
Yeah, but you could be off by an eighth of an inch, right? I mean, if you measure from the center to the tip versus the other side.
He says I might be off by an eighth of an inch. Well, not if you're careful. I mean, you have to be really careful. That's all I can say. Just measuring everything by hand. So I had the position of that center, pretty much before I started, and hit it with a center punch so it didn't lose it. But using the center punched hole, I drilled the center of the propeller out. And that was important because of the way I balanced it, which I'll get into. The question is, did I use different size bits, increasing them as I went along to drill the center hole? No. I just chose the correct diameter to begin with. I used the Forza hit, yeah. So actually, before I drilled that center hole, we kind of got ahead of ourselves. Before I drilled the center hole, I wanted to drill the bolt holes. So the way I did that, I had the correct crush plate that I had purchased, and I had the crush plate, and I knew where the center of the crush plate was, and I knew where the center of the blank was, so I precisely placed the crush plate in the proper place, and the first two holes I wanted to drill were these two, and I lined those two holes up with the longitudinal center of the blank. You need a pretty accurate drill press. At least that's the way I did it. Put the carved prop on your drill press bed. Clamp the crush plate in the proper position and make sure it's not going to move. I used C-clamp affairs and whatnot. Made sure everything was clamped down so it wasn't going to move, and then I just used the crush plate for a drill guide. So you have to make sure you're drilling a square hole. Square down through the rock. It's off, it's not going to line up when you're bolting on your engine. So I proceeded to drill all the bolt holes using the crush plate. You have a question?
I can't overstate it. The way that was done, the first hole went clear through. sequentially, the next hole was not half pressed. Then it was turned over, the fresh plate was put on the hole and it cleared through, and then the hole was drilled from the back.
Okay,
Any misalignment came out.
the gentleman said that the way Oldie Phelan did it was, the first hole was drilled clear through the propeller. And he probably maybe even bolted it on at that point, so it didn't move. Then he proceeded to drill halfway through one side, took a crush and then maybe another crush blade or something the same one, transferred it to the back, flipped the whole assembly over and drilled the second half of it. And I guess the theory was, you know, then he completed the hole from the second side. The theory being that it's going to be more accurate and line up with the propeller head, so you're not going to be off and bolt it on. I actually did that on the first propeller, and the second one I didn't. I just was trying different things. It ended up that, you know, I was maybe off. I had minute discrepancies when I tried to ultimately bolt it on the propeller hub. It wasn't off by very much. I just kind of fudged the hole a little bit to get the bolts to line up. It never really created too much of a problem. But the second time I did it, I just drilled all the way through. And what somebody had suggested to me after I told them that, they said, well, why don't you just use the crush plate and drill it from the back? Use the crush plate, drill from the back of the propeller. That way, you're for sure going to have this end of the hole lining up with your propeller hub. There's no way it can be off. And if the holes happen to be off, you know, minutely, as you drill to the front, it's supposed to be better to have the air on the front than on the back. But you just have to be careful. So at that point, you have the propeller carved. You have your bolt holes drilled. You can then at that point drill out the center. That's the way I did it. I drilled the center out last. And the reason I drilled the center out was because the way I balance the propeller nowadays is I took a piece of 4130 plate steel and I made kind of a more or less a crush plate, and I place this on the top of the propeller. Well, first of all, I take this disc, find the center, and drill a minute hole through the center of it. I bolt this onto the propeller, and then I have like a sharpened, I take a 1/4 inch steel rod and I sharpen a point on it, mount it into a block. So that way, the point of the sharpened steel rod falls into the little minute hole that I've drawn on the plate. And as you can imagine in your mind, then this has freedom to tip in any direction it wants to. And that's going to tell me whether I'm balanced or not. So that I know where to add my weights if I need to. Anybody add weights or delete weight? Well, you can't really delete weight, because if you delete weight, you're going to be changing the shape. The propeller is going to be different on one side than the other side. I don't know how you would delete weight.
How do you add the weight?
So I determined that I needed to add weight. It was unbalanced. So I have this propeller sitting on that sharpened steel rod, and if, let's say it's off, I cut off little hunks of lead and place them wherever it needed to in order to get this to lay perfectly level again. And I used, you can buy various different kind of little bubble level things that you place on the top of this, and that gives you your balance information in both axes, bubble going each way. So you've got it sitting on your pointed 1/4-inch steel dowel or your rod, and I cut off little hunks of lead and placed them in a position whereby the top of the propeller would be perfectly level again. So that way I knew exactly where I needed to put my lead. I actually drilled a hole in the back of the propeller here and filled it with lead shot, and then put some drops of epoxy in there to make sure it wasn't going to move, and cut a little plug from a dowel rod and glued it in there to make a little cap. Say again?
You can use plumber's lead wool.
He says you can use plumber's lead wool. Pack it in there? Is that the way all he's doing it? Okay. And then did he make a little wood cap for it?
Well, wood plastic wood.
Okay.
Wood color.
Wood color? Okay. I see. Yes, sir.
You were talking about Ken earlier. Take care of his airplane. He
Yes.
has an oily failing problem made back in the early 80s when he started the problem. This plug, like you're talking about, on the back side of the cover, I set it off the other day. You can see it's roughly a 3/8 foot valve in 2 places. The back side where it's down.
Okay, with the little plug in. The gentleman says that on Ken Perkins' airplane, he just removed the propeller a few days ago and saw that Ole Phelan had done precisely that in 2 places, had drilled holes in the back of it, all filled it with lead wool. What was it? Plumber's lead wool. Plumber's lead wool. Okay, plumber's lead wool. The same material that they used to use in the old days to put the pipes together with. These holes here? Yeah, sure. I'll get to that. I'm just, the gentleman asked, do I seal the inside of the holes? Yes, you end up sealing the inside of the hole. Now, on a common propeller hub, the continental style propeller hubs, there's these, what do you call the what? Pilot bushings. Bushings, right. There's bushings that extend 1/2 inch or 5/8 into the back of the propeller to have more surface areas to turn the propeller, and you have to accommodate for that. So I just took a drill press and used Forstner bits to drill down to remove the material necessary to have room for those bushings. Now, how do you finish it? What I found as of late, the way I would prefer to do it is, first of all, I take a thin mixture of spar varnish and just kind of wipe it on with an old t-shirt or something, maybe a couple layers of it, real thin, so it soaks into the wood very easily, it doesn't have any buildup. And then I actually fabricated a fixture that looks like kind of a long, forky arm type of a thing, whereby I could clamp to a table out here and reach in and grab the propeller in the center. That way, with the long fork, I could still spin the propeller in any direction I wanted to, and I made a feature where I could flip it over like this. So I could spray paint any part of that propeller and have it in a convenient, position. I've tried to use to brush on finishes in the past, and I had really sketchy luck trying to get a really nice finish. I mean, I'm sure there's people that probably know how to do it a lot better than I do.
Again, Phelan finished all the propellers with the brush.
Mr. Phelan finished all his propellers with a brush.
And mine goes through the center line. And he used a barbecue motor for the whistle, Carve. And that propeller was running real slow.
Okay, that makes sense.
Get on there and put the paint on, and it would start to run, and come around.
I've seen bowl makers do that.
Actually, all the runs will come out and smooth
I
out.
see, that's a good idea. He made a Phelan made a mandrel and powered it with a barbecue motor so that once it started to spin, it spin very, very slowly so that it wouldn't create any drips. And by the time the finish was dry, it didn't have a chance to create any drips, right? Right. Yeah, like I said, I just saw some bowl makers that use that same method. What they've done with their bowl, keep it mounted in the lathe, turn the lathe on real slow, wipe all their finish on there, and they can go home at night and they let it spin all night like that. But what I was going to say is I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good idea. What I ended up doing on the propeller that's on my Pietenpol right now, and I was pretty pleased with it, after I made that fork-type fixture, I just wiped on the first couple of coats of thinned out spar varnish. And then having the propeller clamped in that fork fixture, I just simply used rattle can spar varnish that I bought from the hardware store and just sprayed on thin coats one at a time. I mean, I put probably at least 15 coats of that on the propeller and fine wet sanded it in between the coats. It takes a long time because you have to make sure each coat is dry before you start sanding on it. But if you look at that finish, I'm pretty pleased with it. It came out really well. It's inexpensive using that rattle can spar varnish.
How's that hold up to the,
The weather?
yeah, just your leading edges?
Oh, well, you can't fly through any rain unless you put some protection on it, that's for sure. I flew through about a minute of rain with this thing, and after I got down, I could tell it was starting to chew up already. You just can't do it. But I've had good luck with the finish on that one so far.
How many hours do you have work?
This one I flew for 7 years. Hours, probably 175.
And I noticed this propeller here has different color variations.
Okay.
Versus that. Can you explain?
He says, why are these laminations different color?
Is it different wood?
Right, it was maple and oak alternating. Just for aesthetics.
What about that one?
That one's all maple.
Is it better to change the maple or the birch?
No, birch is a very good species of wood to use for this color, and there's some, I've spoken to some propeller makers, and that's all they use is birch. Birch is very good.
What's the first one?
This one here is ash. The first one I made was ash. One of the things about using ash is a real good wood. It's easy to work with. They make baseball bats out of ash, so it's real strong. The one difficulty with using ash is there's a real difference in the hardness between the spring and the summer wood. So that it's almost impossible to get a smooth finish. You end up with kind of a ripply finish when you're sanding. Even if you have a sander block, it tends to sand the soft material faster than the next layer of hard material. Like these darker lines here, this is the hard stuff. Just And so when you get done with it, what I did was use a metal file to knock the high spots off. And it happens more in this area than it does way out here. But I just used the metal file to knock the high spots off. But I didn't have to do that so much with the maple. This winter, when I was carving that second top out there, I was in a wood shop where they did not want me to create a lot of dust. So I couldn't use my sanding method, my disc sanding method with no material. So I bought one of the silicone tools. And I actually ended up preferring using this than I did the sander. It takes material off slower, but it's a lot easier to control how much material you're removing. It's easier to make a mistake with the sanding method. That, you got that big horse of a sander with the 80 grit paper, 60 grit paper, and, one wrong pass and you made a mistake. With this thing, you just move a lot slower, remove material a lot slower, and you can just use your eyes. It's amazing how your eyes can pick up subtleties when after a while, you can just tell by looking at it whether you're too deep. Yes, sir.
So, rough rule of thumb, are we talking about millimeter, 2 millimeter design rules? How far off, how sloppy can you be? How far off can your prop be and still be functional? Is that making?
Yeah, I understand. The question is how far off can you be from one side to the other? Can it be a millimeter thickness, 2 millimeters? That's the question.
Yeah, or just in any dimension, yeah.
Any dimension. I don't claim to be an expert in propeller carving, so let's get that out of the way. I've done it. I've been successful with it, so that's why I decided to give this forum today. If you were to precisely measure this with a laser, I'm sure there would be differences from one side to the other. How much? Half a millimeter, if I was going to guess, maybe
Okay.
in some point.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. The comment was he thought that there would be more issues with balance than there would be with different shapes from one side to the other, which is probably true. The balance is really important.
I would say balance is the most important thing. And from my own personal case experience using a certificate propeller, I picked up a vibration from my detail. And when I checked it, I had it started to balance the machine. At the tip, I was out by 1 inch, 1 ounce. That was where all the vibration, a lot of vibration.
Gentlemen experienced by propeller vibration on Tailorcraft, a cents-inch propeller, and he discovered the source of the vibration was that one end of the prop was 1 ounce heavier than the other side, and that was a cents-inch prop. So.
I think what happened was that one tip
way more balance test. You test that real fast.
I tried to reach her out.
He suspected that the difference in weight was due to moisture. Tried to drive the moisture out by different methods and was unsuccessful. How did you get it to balance? Oh, he went on board.
I didn't know exactly that was 100%. Instead of that balance,
Happy motor? And you're not working right now? Because that's not good. Not much. All on my bike.
some other,
There's a big chunk of
let me buy the belt. But, you can't legally balance your
Oh, yeah. Airport does make a difference to come in.
Okay, legally, you probably had to send your color shop.
More lift, more
Anybody else?
What kind of glue, I'm sorry, was
Weldwood plastic resin glue.
Yes, sir.
Is there any magic to the number of laminations?
Any magic to the number of laminations?
Is 7 better than 5 or
There's no magic. I would say that it's probably an advantage to have more laminations because that means there's more blue lines, which means there's more information.
Have you experimented with any sort of leading edge protection? I know there's a product called Guard that's plastic that you can put on the leading edge. I just wondered if that would make any
The
difference.
question is, what about plastic leading edge protections that you can buy? I looked in the aircraft screws catalog, and I don't remember what the name of the product was, but it was one of those applied plastic leading edge protections you can put on it. The one I looked at, they said it was not recommended to put on a list. So, yes, sir. He wants to know whether these planks were planed before they were glued. When I bought these particular pieces, they were provided plain, but yes, you really do need to have really nice plain surfaces to glue together. Make sure that all the thickness is uniform throughout the plank. So, obviously, you start out with more precise pieces, it's going to be easier to end up with a quality product in the end.
What about edge gluing to get a wider board? You see some of the props out there, especially around the hall. There's edge gluing to get a wider board.
Edge glue.
Yes.
Question was, if you look at some of these production propellers, there's quite a few pieces that they just glue together, and it seems to be kind of random. They don't really care how many pieces. They just want to end up with the proper size when they're done, so they glue all pieces together and it doesn't matter. I have never done it, but obviously it's okay to do because I've seen Sentinels propellers with different random pieces glued together. Yes, sir. Do I have any way of measuring the moisture content? I don't, but it's probably a good idea to measure moisture content. I haven't really researched that. There's probably a good maximum and minimum that's adhered to, but I didn't even consider it too much. Yes, sir.
how about putting too much pressure on it?
Can you put too much pressure on it to squeeze all the glue out? Oh, good question. I don't really know the answer to that. I just use kind of
Trust me that you can.
seat of the pants based on prior experience on building different things. Yes, sir. When I use what?
What do you use to replace?
Okay, the question is, if someone were to use the threaded rod with the steel brackets across, what do you use for a base to make sure that you're starting off with a nice level? Obviously, the answer is you need to start out with a level surface, whatever it happens to be. Whether it's wood or plywood or steel. I don't really think, if you have straight boards to begin with, and you have a pretty straight base, probably not really an issue. your data line, your center line block, that's what you're going to carve to. So theoretically, the other dimensions could be off a little bit, but since you're always carving, you're starting off from your measuring from your drawn straight data line to begin with. That's what you're going to be carving to. So.
Back to the question about ground fine and dried anyway, like anything like you have to let it acclimate for several days.
Yeah, the comment was if you're buying kiln-dried lumber from a reputable hardwood dealer, you bring the pieces into your work area and let it acclimate for several days to absorb for as much moisture as you get in the room, and they're all going to be the same. So you're starting off with the same moisture content in each blank. Same as you would if you had hardwood floors.
Did you run your blank steel planer, or just use the?
As a matter of fact, when I got done with gluing up the big block on this thing, I actually ran it through a planer.
But did you plane the individual laminations before you glued them?
Did I plane each lamination before I glued it? I didn't, because the material that I received was very accurate to begin with. But if you're starting off with rough lumber, yeah, you have to make sure you have nice plain pieces that glue together.
How many hours do you have in building each of your blocks?
How many hours do I have in carving each one of those props? I don't know. A lot. I just took my time. I wasn't in a hurry. Can't be in a hurry. What's that? How much elapsed time? Oh, how much elapsed time? Well, working in my spare time, weeks. Sorry?
Lehman did that with a house jack every foot. All the glue was applied from one time. Then quickly. Block the center. So in the press, the house jack, put glue down just as high as you can get. Wait 30 minutes. Come back to another quarter hour. When the plastic resin glue, the way to tell it, Salem had newspapers under the block, glues run down on the newspaper, and it would look like canvas. And it broke like canvas. Prior to that,
the comment was that all the glue on the layers on the Phelan props were put on at the same time, put in the press. All the screws were screwed as tight as you could get.
those are house
standard.
Those are
house jacks. He used house jacks, which are very powerful, correct? And he screwed those as tight as he could get them for a half an hour, and then he came back and tightened them again. Another quarter turn after that. So the answer is probably it's pretty hard to squeeze all the glue out to be in an unsafe condition. And how did Mr. Phelan know that the plastic resin glue was properly dry? He put newspaper under the block and it dribbled down like candy out onto the newspaper. And when he could just crack it off and break it easily, then the glue is considered dry.
Yeah, when you talk about number of laminations, would you want to use an odd number of laminations? With the number of laminations, would you want to use an odd number?
Would you want to use an odd number of laminations?
Yeah, like plywood is always an odd number.
There's a central piece, then going symmetries off the seam.
So you have the
seam's not
center,
there.
and then you just kind of sandwich out from there.
It's kind of an interesting idea.
the gentleman is saying you should use always an odd number of laminations.
Well, that way there's no seam in the middle.
Yeah, but you're never gonna get to the middle, only at certain points. I don't see where that stress is.
I just meant from a stress point of view. If you have some torquing, there's no middle place to be a fulcrum. There's always wood in there. I assume that's why they do it.
contend that the glue joint is so strong that it wouldn't make a difference. Personally, I don't see what difference it would make to anybody else.
Yeah, I get that, but you like more moist. You rip plywood apart, it rips at the wood. I believe what you said.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a wood guy, I don't know.
He's noting that I have different thicknesses of some of these laminations, and that's correct. I think what happened was I ran these through the planer for one reason or another.
You're not gonna tell me you screwed up.
No. I ran these through the planer for some reason or another. I can't remember now. I wanted to end up with a certain thickness.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's why I added those two thin laminations. Ultimately, it really doesn't matter what the thickness. You could have all three. No, you wouldn't want to do that because you want to have symmetry on that.
I've done just one, and I run all my, and I want to put a certain thickness, so I run all my corners and they were like 1 in the 16s, so they were all the same thickness.
Yeah, now that
His working assumption is
actually,
four to
it probably doesn't matter how thick the
Otherwise,
laminations are.
you match wood to wood. He's got,
I'm just talking out loud for myself. What difference would it make? Because, you know, as you carve each blade, you're going to end up with the glue line in one spot, no matter what. As long as you put that glue line precise.
and the weights of these things are part of, suggest that quarter F densities don't matter with.
Anybody else?
So, I'm not a structural engineer, I'm not going to pretend I am one, but you're basically saying that 4 to F density differences, either in wood layers or in weights for balancing issues, just don't matter in a problem. At least within the range you're dealing with. Is that fair?
Well, it does matter, because let's say,
Knock the mic right up.
what I was going to say is it probably does matter. The question was, this weight difference doesn't matter, between this end and this end. This side is much heavier than this.
No, I meant 4 to F through
4 to half.
4 to F.
4 to half.
Sorry. At least not within the ranges you're dealing with.
Yeah, with this range of horsepower, it probably doesn't matter too much, I would think. So, ultimately, after I got back from Oshkosh and I ended up carving the propeller and I had success with it, I thought about it for a minute and I thought to myself, I looked around to see what information was available out there to purchase. If somebody else, like me, wanted to carve a prop and they knew absolutely nothing about it, could I go out and buy a book that would spoon feed everything from start to finish? Just the nuts and the bolts, exactly how to carve a prop. Not much theory, just kind of nuts and bolts how to carve it. And I really didn't see anything out there available. So that's when I decided to sit down and write what I call my instructional essay, to review all my experiences. I wrote everything down in detail from the standpoint of somebody not knowing the first thing about propeller carving. They could take this instructional essay that I wrote and read it, follow the instructions, and be able to end up with a functional propeller when they got done. I did that, and if anybody's interested, I've got some CD copies of this, and when you print it out, it's 63 pages. But it more or less explains in detail everything that I've said today. With a lot of photographs that I took, a lot of them that I took at Oshkosh at Gemini. So if anybody's interested, I've got these for sale for $20. Yes. I didn't have a form or anything, but I was probably selling them out of my airplane.
Okay, yeah, but I've got this one.
No.
You've seen his feet. You've seen his Pietenpol.
I haven't. Oh, well, I probably haven't seen. Didn't know it was his. Which one is it?
Black and orange and yellow. One of Lindy.
Is that right?
I referenced that.
And then you had some comments on this about where you alternate the heavy end of the board, and that, look, he didn't mention anything about that.
Oh, it is.
And, good idea.
Yeah, there's other publications on there about propeller making. I think the one you're talking about is a fellow named Eric Clutton. He published a book called Propeller Making for the Amateur. And I've read it. It's a small book.
It's just a small, yeah,
Right, it's a small book.
Yeah.
And it's got more theory. The information that I have here is a lot of mathematical theory. It's more nuts and bolts, you know, geared toward a craftsman with a home builder that wants to build something other, and has the ability to gather the anecdotal information that you need as far as diameter and pitch from other people. If you know what diameter and what pitch of propeller you need for your home build, if you read this and follow it, you should be able to cover the propeller.
How do we find your essay?
Good question. I have a bunch of them right here. $20 a piece.